I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first? Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right,
In
Mr.
which case, we've got two of them on stage tonight.
I'd first like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
We've got two of you on stage.
The second thing that I will say is I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition.
In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice.
Adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy answer.
All right, folks. Well, the third GOP presidential debate, unfortunately, took place last night in Miami, Florida. We got to react to it and give you my review here today like we've done for every single one of these things. But before we get into that, I do want to promote the fact that we currently have a change.org petition running to deport Nikki Haley, okay? Because frankly, folks, if she is so obsessed with foreign wars in foreign countries and she really doesn't care about America that much, we are advocating for her here today to pick up and move to those places. In fact, we will help her move. So everyone go sign the petition. Link is down in the description to, again, deport Nikki Haley. We are already at 159 signatures. Help us get to 200 here today by signing the petition down in the link in the description. And hey, share it with a friend, because apparently you can do that. You can share on Facebook, email, WhatsApp, Twitter. Feel free. Share it with a friend. Let's all juice this, okay? Deport Nikki Haley. We are starting that movement here today. Go sign the petition, everyone, right now. All right, with that said, let's get into this actual GOP debate. I want to start by saying that as more of these things happen and as more of them just become a train wreck, Donald Trump is completely vindicated in his decision to just skip these things and basically drown out the noise and the energy behind them. And, you know, you look back to August when he initially made the decision not to debate. It was controversial at the time. A lot of people didn't like it. I, never hated on the decision. I always understood the logic, but I personally have always wanted to see Donald Trump debate, right? Selfishly, that would be entertaining. But I think you see, as more of these things happen and, they just increasingly become more of a sideshow, a circus, and just broadly irrelevant in the context of not only this primary, but just American politics as a whole, as the viewership drops from about 11 people to 10 people to 9 people and now about to 5, you increasingly can say Donald Trump's judgment here to skip these debates, to decide it's not worth my time, it doesn't really help me in any way, again, becomes increasingly vindicated, because I think as more of these happen, we kind of understand nobody cares and they're frankly non-consequential. So I know after every single one of these debates, people say Donald Trump won, but I think you see over time that there is actually truth to the idea that these things are not serious and they are actively actually becoming less serious as they go on. So as interesting as it is and as entertaining as it is, and as much as it does matter in some ways, and we'll talk about that in a second, again, Donald Trump skipping this stuff, completely vindicated, and, there's no reason for him to start debating now, and I think we all understand that. With that said, I do still think there is one level of importance to these GOP debates, and it has nothing to do with the Republican primary itself. It instead, though, reflects, and it's an important kind of message to the Republican electorate of, outside of Trump and a select few politicians and maybe Vivek, a guy on that stage, it really tells you a lot about where most of the GOP still is, right? The past couple years, you've had this ruse, you've had this mirage that, oh, Donald Trump has fundamentally changed the GOP. And while he's changed a lot of attitudes, and in some ways you could argue we are moving in the right direction over time, I think you are still seeing a lot of this party is still stuck in 2003. They still want to go back to the GOP of George Bush.
You have to strike in Iran. If you want to make a difference, you cannot just continue to have strikes in Syria on warehouses. You actually have to cut off the head of the snake, and the head of the snake is Iran and not simply their proxies.
This whole idea you've heard for so long about Trumpism without Trump, or the National Review articles about how the GOP needs to move on from Donald Trump, move forward from Donald Trump. It has never meant moving forward, okay? And this whole idea of quote unquote Trumpism without Trump has never meant Trumpism, right? It has always meant, it's always been a Trojan horse for a return to the GOP of 2003. And I think when you saw most of what you heard in that stage last night, especially in that first hour on foreign policy, we'll talk about it here in a second, you see that that is true, right? And, you know, it's sad, it's unfortunate, because, you know, like it or not, at some point, the GOP, as just a matter of fact, is going to have to move on from Donald Trump, whether that's 2024, 2028, etc. But, you know, the future of this party without him, frankly, looks pretty bleak. One thing that did not look bleak last night and actually shined, though, and we'll give credit here, is Vivek Ramaswamy, right? I actually thought he dominated last night. In every one of these debates, I've been rooting for him by proxy. I do support Trump, but, you know, he is kind of, at least on that stage, the best envoy for America First, to make America great again, the, you know, true conservative ideas, whatever you want to call them. And last night, you saw an absolute dominant home run grand slam, I thought, performance from him. And, you know, and I will say this, it was much better than the last debate, okay? Because I think, you know, you look at the first debate, he did pretty well, okay? He definitely made some waves. The second GOP debate, though, I think a lot of people would agree he was a little bit too soft, right? Because the first debate, he goes on and says, all of you people on the stage are establishment corporate shills, which, of course, is true. And that's why people like Vivek, because he actually calls that out. But then the second debate, he tries to turn it around and say, no, everyone on the stage, they're good people, but we disagree on substantive issues, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you can't call people establishment shills in the first debate and then the second debate try to be nice to them. This debate, though, you got none of that, okay? He went scorched earth. He, again, like I said, I thought had his most savage and just best performance overall.
Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first? Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case, we've got two of them on stage tonight.
I think he definitely comes out last night, at least of the people on that stage, the clear and obvious winner. And like I said, I think his best performance we've seen in any of these three debates yet. And there's a couple reasons for that, not only just because his strategy was good, but I would argue the issues that you've seen the past month or so and that were debated mainly last night were absolutely lined up for him, right? All the bases were loaded. He was ready to hit the home run, the grand slam. He hit it right. But the issues that were debated definitely went in his favor, because you look at that whole first hour of the debate, you know, what was the main focus? As you could imagine, with everything going on in the world right now, was foreign policy. And foreign policy, in my opinion, is just simply Vivek's best issue. He's just so good about talking about it, right? He's very articulate. He knows what he's talking about. I think he's very good on the issues. He's good on articulating the actual America First nationalist view of foreign policy.
So what I would tell Bibi, I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border. And then I'll tell him, as president of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border. That's his responsibility. This is our responsibility. That's how we move forward. But I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past. Corrupt politicians in both parties spent trillions, killed millions, made billions for themselves in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting wars that sent thousands of our sons and daughters, people my age, to die in wars that did not advance anyone's interests, adding $7 trillion to our national debt. And Joe Biden sold off our foreign policy. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, got a $5 million bribe from Ukraine. That's why we're sending $200 billion back to that same country. The fact of the matter is the Republican Party is not that much better. You have the likes of Nikki Haley, who stepped down from her time at the UN. Bankrupt or in debt was her family. Then she becomes a military contractor. She joins the board of Boeing and otherwise, and is now a multimillionaire. So I think that that's wrong when Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice we face.
But it's not just about that. It's about the contrast, right? That's just the wedge issue that he stood apart so much from the rest of the crowd. And again, the fact that it was debated so much last night for obvious reasons really tilted the odds already in his favor there, because not only is he himself good on foreign policy, but the rest of the candidates on that stage are not, right? Vivek stood out as the only candidate up there that did not have a George Bush 2003 style take on any of this foreign policy stuff. You had Tim Scott go up there, explicitly call for strikes on Iran, right? Basically saying, let's go to war with Iran. Nikki Haley said more or less the same thing. So did Chris Christie, as you could imagine. Ron DeSantis, as usual, on foreign policy, would not give very clear answers. Everything was kind of ambiguous. And so he kind of just became a non-factor in that first hour. And so you have on one side a true, America first, solid stance on foreign policy. Hey, let's not get caught up in these wars. Hey, we do not want what's happening in Israel right now to drag us into it and to cause a greater regional conflict. Hey, we should be trying to negotiate a peace in Eastern Europe, not trying to, continue on this war for no reason and sacrifice a bunch of Ukrainians or Russians for what exactly, right? Very good on that stuff. But again, you can make an argument, for instance, if the whole debate last night was about immigration, okay, Vivek would say some good stuff, but most of the party, right, most of the candidates say similar things about, securing the southern border and stopping fentanyl. So it wasn't just about the fact that Vivek was good on this foreign policy issue. It was also that the rest of the GOP was so bad on it. And again, that's about the entire first hour of this debate, very dominant. And then when you look at that closing statement that Vivek made that's being talked about a lot, again, here's another example of how circumstance benefited him so much up there, because he brings up what you saw on Tuesday night, which was devastating electoral losses for the Republican Party, right? And what you saw in most of these cases lose on Tuesday night were, as much as, neocons and stuff will blame Donald Trump for it, these were not Trump-style Republicans, or Donald Trump really had absolutely nothing to do with any of those races, right? This was generic, kind of just run-of-the-mill Republicans who basically all got embarrassed in the elections on Tuesday. Vivek goes out there and says, and he implicitly makes the appeal, I am not a generic Republican. America, you saw what happened on Tuesday. This is why the rest of that stage cannot be up there. And then he did something pretty bold, which was he directly took a shot at Ronna McDaniel, right? The terrible, awful, incompetent grifter chair of the RNC who has overseen a lot of electoral losses.
We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party.
He definitely made some waves and turned some heads, pissed some people off with that statement. But again, I thought that was spot on, because most of his base, most of the Trump base, etc., we all more or less feel the same way. Ronna McDaniel, honestly, forget how you personally feel about her. The record doesn't lie. She has not been good as the leader of the RNC. And, he definitely pissed some people off by saying that. But like I said, when you look at what happened on Tuesday, the debate on Wednesday, again, very good night and very favorable night for Vivek. And with that said, let's talk about his arch rival last night, which is, of course, none other than Nikki, neocon, Nimrata, getting deported soon, Nikki Haley, ladies and gentlemen. And oh boy, do I have to say this. Vivek last night absolutely embarrassed her. And you could tell, I know the neocons and her supporters are going to pretend like she won because she was talking and screeching a lot. But you could very visibly tell she was on the defensive. She was just, kind of became, as she usually is in many ways, an insufferable, screaming, crying, whiny, certain word that starts with B that you can fill in the rest in terms of what I'm saying there. Unbelievable. Okay. And, there's several different moments that we could point to. I mean, you look at her the whole night. She just on so many levels is insufferable. But of course, she has that one-liner on the heels where Vivek basically calls her like Dick Cheney in high heels, which is absolutely true. And she responds. She actually said this last night on the stage. She says, Vivek, I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition.
First, like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
We've got two of you on stage.
The second thing that I will say is I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition.
Okay, so you probably hear that and you're thinking, what does that, literally, what does that mean? You wear heels not for a fashion statement, but for ammunition? So, that was an obvious gaffe or failed one-liner on her part, but it's even worse. Not only, does she say that, but her campaign on Twitter, instead of pretending like it was a gaffe that, hey, let's ignore that, okay, that never happened, they tweet that out on her Twitter account. Okay? So, again, total blunder by her part. We're still trying to figure out exactly what does this even mean. And you had that moment. Of course, you had the moment where, she's going after Vivek for using TikTok, and Vivek calls out the fact your own daughter has a TikTok account. And you go out here and basically claim every single day TikTok is a vital threat to American security, and basically shame on anyone who uses TikTok. She's attacked Vivek for using TikTok for his campaign purposes, right? It's about getting a message out. She's like, you can't use TikTok. You're anti-American, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, her own daughter is using TikTok. So
in the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice.
Adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy answer.
I know a lot of people attack Vivek. They said that was below the belt. I don't think it's below the belt, because it's not a cheap personal insult. It's a genuine question. If you claim that TikTok is such a great, vital security threat to Americans, and basically if you're using TikTok, you're like killing yourself or blah, 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 then it is an open question. Why do you allow or encourage your own family to use it? Right? It's not those are just two moments we can point to, but I think you saw overall throughout the night. I mean, I think there's two reasons, frankly, why Nikki Haley just did so bad. Okay? Because let me say, before we talk about her actual policies and ideas, which again are all terrible and go back to 2003, and she is indeed Dick Cheney in high heels, I just want to say that on a personal level, you want to talk about awful, about insufferable, about intolerable, truly all of the worst words, they all apply here to Nikki Haley, okay? And again, there's a certain word that starts with B that she really does come across, I think, to most people. I know there's like a 10% crowd. A lot of them are California Republicans who claim, oh, she's such an empowering girl boss, blah, blah, blah. But I think you will find, Nikki, in the actual primary, that the vast majority of Republicans do not want to be screamed and lectured at by, a whiny, insufferable, nails on a chalkboard, B-word female dog, okay? And that is, of course, the truth. And I think a lot of people agree that they just, on a very personal level, found her to be insufferable, frankly, in a way that, as bad as Chris Christie is, as bad as Mike Pence is, as similar as they are ideologically, there is just something about the delivery and the image and the way Nikki Haley handles herself, that sort of annoying girl boss persona that just adds to the level of just insufferability and unlikability. With that said, we can also talk about the substance here, and I will say this too. As much as you will see Nikki Haley get pushed by corporate media on both sides, on both left and right? Fox News, NBC, you're going to hear them say the same thing, which is Nikki Haley is surging in the GOP race. I think in many ways, it's actually astroturfed. Okay. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying she does not have real support, because I do think there is a genuine market of about 10 to 15% of the worst type of Republican voters still left in this party that are, truly wanting to go back to the GOP of George Bush and John McCain. That is true. I'm not saying they don't not exist. There are some that exist. But the truth is that they're far smaller in the Republican electorate than corporate media thinks there are. And I think when you subtract out, again, that 10 to 15%, I do think she's hit her ceiling here. And look at the rest of the Republican electorate. No, most Republican voters, although they do have varying stances on things, fundamentally do not want to go back to the GOP of 2003. And they certainly do not want to do that at the hands of an insufferable, annoying girl boss who we are going to be deporting soon. So, Nikki Haley, just an atrocious performance, frankly, an atrocious person. Okay. I never liked her to begin with. I thought it was impossible for me to dislike her more. No, last night after that, I actively do dislike her more. I didn't even know that was possible. So that really does sum up the kind of contrast in this debate. It was mainly Vivek and Nikki Haley. Okay. New kind of conservative ideas versus old quote unquote conservative ideas. And that really does sum up last night's debate. I mean, we can talk about Ron DeSantis, but his supporters will not like this, but it's true. In many ways, he was a non-factor last night. Okay. And that's been true of most of these debates. I'd argue his second debate was kind of the most prominent. You really forgot about him last night, kind of failed to notice. Okay. And the same could be said about Chris Christie. I was actually surprised he didn't seem to make more waves, but I think he understands his campaign is over. He'll probably be dropping out and endorsing either Ron or Nikki soon. And the same could be said about Tim Scott, just totally irrelevant. So with that said, folks, that does sum up my review of last night's GOP debate. Again, I think, the story, as you've seen with most of these, you got one guy who's saying the right things on the stage for the most part, Vivek. The rest of the party is stuck in 2003, and Ron DeSantis, it's just kind of there. Okay. And that's how it goes. With that said, folks, let me know your thoughts. Again, one last time, I will promote the petition to deport Nikki Haley, 159 signatures. Feel free to go sign it. And with that said, folks, we're at 164. There you go. So as I was recording this, it went up by 5. All right. With that said, folks, Alpha Moves only. God bless. Be sure to like and subscribe before you go. Deport Nikki Haley, and peace.